The Empire had ruled the 12 star systems for 10,000 years. Their cities floated above purple clouds. Their warships blocked out the light of suns. Their people, stood 9 feet tall with skin that looked like living crystal. They believed they were the greatest species in the galaxy. They had never been proven wrong. At the heart of their power stood an ancient law. The Apex Guardian, a creature built from the genes of 1,000 conquered species, served as the protector of the royal bloodline. It was 40 feet tall. Its claws could tear through starship armor. Its crystalline hide could stop plasma fire. And for 3,000 years, no challenger had survived more than 60 seconds against it. The law was simple. Any being who killed the Guardian in single combat earned the right to join their blood with the royal family. Their children would sit on the throne. Their genetics would shape the future of the Empire. It was the ultimate test, the ultimate prize, and the ultimate death sentence for anyone foolish enough to try. Commander did not come to Prime looking for a fight. She came as a diplomat. Humanity had only discovered faster-than-light travel 20 years ago. In galactic terms, they were infants. The great empires looked at Earth and saw a small, violent species from a planet that should not have produced intelligent life at all. The gravity was too strong. The atmosphere was filled with a corrosive gas called oxygen. The surface was covered with predators, diseases, and natural disasters that would kill most galactic species in hours. They called Earth a death world. They meant it as an insult. They did not understand that this was exactly why humans were dangerous. Arrived on a shuttle with 3 other diplomats. She wore her military uniform because the Earth government wanted to show strength. She carried no weapons because they had forbidden them. She was 34 years old, with dark hair cut short and eyes that had seen combat on 3 different planets. She was not afraid of She had fought worse things in the jungles of Venus. The Imperial Palace was a mountain of white crystal that glowed with its own inner light, and her team were led through halls that could have held aircraft carriers. The servants looked down at them with barely hidden disgust. To them, humans were ugly, small, and fragile. They could not understand why the Emperor had agreed to meet with such primitive creatures at all. The throne room was the size of a sports stadium. The Emperor sat on a throne carved from a single diamond. His skin was deep blue crystal, and his eyes burned with cold white fire. Around him stood the princes and princesses of the royal blood, each one beautiful and terrible in the way that gods are beautiful and terrible. Crown Prince X stood closest to the throne. He was young by standards, only 300 years old. His skin was pale silver, and he looked at the human delegation the way a child looks at insects. The negotiations began well enough. Earth wanted trade agreements. They wanted to study human biology, spoke carefully, using all the diplomatic training she had received. For 2 hours, everything went smoothly. Then Crown Prince X made a joke. He said that humans would make excellent pets. He said that their short made them hardly worth talking to. He said that herself was almost pretty, for a creature made of meat and water. The other laughed. Did not laugh. She looked directly at the Crown Prince and said, very calmly, that she had killed things far more impressive than him before breakfast. The throne room went silent. In culture, to challenge a member of the royal blood was a crime punishable by death. It did not matter that the prince had insulted her first. It did not matter that she was a diplomat with protected status. She had spoken words of challenge, and the law was clear. The Emperor rose from his throne. His voice was like thunder rolling through mountains. Of Earth was given 2 choices. She could accept execution, and her body would be sent back to her planet as a warning, or she could face the trial of ascension. She could fight the Apex Guardian in single combat. If she won, the insult would be forgiven. More than forgiven. She would earn the right to join her blood with the royal family. Her children would be princes and princesses of the empire. If she lost, she would die, but she would die with honor. Looked at the Emperor. She looked at the crown prince, who was smiling like he had already won. She looked at her fellow diplomats who were pale with fear. She thought about Earth. She thought about the message it would send if she accepted execution. She thought about the millions of years of evolution that had shaped her species. Humans had survived ice ages. They had survived predators with claws and teeth. They had survived each other, which was often the hardest thing of all. Was afraid, but her ancestors had been afraid too, and they had survived anyway. That was what humans did. They survived. She accepted the trial. The court erupted in laughter. They could not believe what they were hearing. This tiny creature, this soft-skinned mammal from a death world, thought she could fight the apex guardian. She could not even reach its knee. She would be crushed like an insect. Crown Prince X laughed loudest of all. He said that at least it would be entertaining. He said he would enjoy watching her die. Said nothing. She simply looked at him with those dark, quiet eyes, eyes that had seen death before, eyes that were not afraid of it. The trial was set for the next morning, was given a room in the palace and guards at her door. She was told she could request any weapon she wanted, though they made it clear that it would not matter. No weapon had ever pierced the guardian's hide. That night sat alone in her room and thought about the creature she would face. She thought about its size, its strength, its armor. She thought about 3,000 years of challengers who had tried and failed. Then she thought about something else. She thought about wolves hunting mammoths on the frozen plains of ancient Earth. She thought about early humans with stone spears bringing down creatures 10 times their size. She thought about the simple truth that her species had learned before they had even invented fire. You did not need to be stronger than your enemy. You just needed to be smarter, faster, and more willing to die trying. Closed her eyes and slept. Tomorrow, she would show the galaxy what a death world could produce. Woke 3 hours before dawn. She had slept deeply, the way soldiers learn to sleep before battle. Every minute of rest was a weapon. Every dream was training for the mind. Her body had learned this lesson across a dozen battlefields, and it did not forget. She stood at the window of her room and looked out at the alien sky. 3 moons hung above the crystal spires of the city. The air outside was thin and cold, perfect for lungs. A human would feel dizzy out there, starved for oxygen, had trained in conditions far worse. She had run marathons in the high mountains of Earth. She had fought in the crushing atmosphere of Venus. Her blood carried oxygen better than any species in the known galaxy. They did not know this. They looked at humans and saw fragile creatures with soft skin and short lives. They did not understand what soft skin meant. They did not understand why humans lived fast and died young. On most planets, life was gentle. Evolution moved slowly. Species grew large and powerful because they had time. They had evolved on a world with low gravity, stable weather, and few predators. They were crystalline because their planet had given them millions of years to develop perfect defenses. They were slow because they had never needed to be fast. Earth was different. Earth was a monster. Gravity on Earth was crushing by galactic standards. Humans had bones dense as stone just to stand upright. Their muscles were built for endurance, for chasing prey across endless plains until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. Their hearts pumped blood at pressures that would kill in seconds. And then there was the brain. Humans had evolved as both predator and prey. They had spent millions of years being hunted by things with claws and teeth, and hunting those same things right back. Their nervous systems were built for split-second decisions. Their adrenal glands could flood their bodies with chemicals that turned fear into focus. When a human was in danger, time itself seemed to slow down. Their minds processed information faster than any computer they had ever built. Knew all of this. She had studied the reports from Earth's Xenobiology division. She understood exactly what she was and exactly what they were not. She began to prepare. First, she stretched. Every muscle, every joint, every tendon. Her body was a machine built for survival, and she needed it working perfectly. She moved through exercises that her species had developed over thousands of years. Yoga, martial arts, military combat training. Each motion was precise. Each breath was controlled. Then she ate. They had brought her their finest food, but she ignored it. She had packed her own supplies. Protein bars dense with calories, water mixed with electrolytes, caffeine tablets to sharpen her mind. Her body needed fuel that burned hot and fast. She ate like a predator preparing for a hunt. Finally, she studied. Earth's intelligence division had gathered everything they could find about the Apex Guardian. There were recordings of its previous fights. There were scans of its biological structure. There were reports from the few survivors who had witnessed the trials without being killed. The Guardian was not a natural creature. They had built it from the genes of their greatest conquered enemies. Its hide was crystalline, like skin, but 10 times thicker. Its muscles were grown from predators that had hunted across 100 worlds. Its brain was simple but efficient, focused entirely on combat. Most importantly, it had a weakness. Every living thing has a weakness. The Guardian's was its regenerative core, a cluster of organs in its chest that could heal almost any wound. The core was what made the Guardian immortal. It was also the only part of the creature that was soft. The problem was getting to it. The core was buried under 6 feet of crystalline armor. No plasma weapon had ever burned through. No explosive had ever cracked it. Challengers had tried missiles, energy blades, and weapons that could destroy starships. All had failed. Had something different. She pulled a case from her supplies and opened it carefully. Inside lay a blade the length of her forearm. It looked simple, almost primitive, just a handle and a thin edge that seemed to shimmer in the light. It was called a molecular blade. Earth scientists had developed it in secret. The edge was only a single molecule thick. It could cut between the bonds that held atoms together. It could slice through diamond like water. It could cut through anything, as long as the person holding it was fast enough to use it. They did not know this weapon existed. They thought humans were primitives who had barely discovered space travel. They did not realize that Earth scientists had been building weapons since the first human picked up a stone. Held the blade and felt its weight. It was light. It was perfect. It was the product of a species that had learned to kill things bigger than itself since the beginning of time. She spent the remaining hours in meditation. Not the peaceful meditation of monks, but the focused meditation of warriors. She visualized the fight. She saw the Guardian in her mind. She imagined its movements, its attacks, its weaknesses. She played the battle over and over until every motion was burned into her memory. When the guards came to escort her to the arena, she was ready. The walk through the palace was long. Thousands lined the halls to watch the dead human walking. They pointed and laughed. They made jokes about how quickly she would die. Some of them placed bets on whether she would last 10 seconds or 20. Ignored them all. She was not in the palace anymore. She was in a place inside her own mind where nothing existed except the hunt. Her ancestors had gone to this place when they faced mammoths and saber-toothed tigers. It was older than language, older than thought. It was the pure focus of a predator about to strike. The arena was open to the sky. It was a circle of white stone half a mile across, surrounded by rising seats filled with millions of watching. The emperor sat on a floating platform above the crowd. The crown prince stood beside him, still smiling. At the far end of the arena, a massive gate began to open. The ground shook, the crowd fell silent, and from the darkness beyond the gate the Apex Guardian emerged. It was bigger than the recordings had shown, 40 feet tall with 4 arms ending in claws that could cut through battle tanks. Its crystalline hide glittered in the sunlight like a mountain made of diamonds. Its eyes were empty pits of darkness. It had no soul. It had no mercy. It existed only to kill. Stood alone in the center of the arena. She was so small compared to the monster that some of the crowd lost sight of her entirely. She looked like an ant facing a god. She raised her blade. The molecular edge caught the light and seemed to disappear. The guardian roared. The sound was so loud that it cracked the stone beneath his feet. And Daughter of a Death World smiled. The hunt had begun. The guardian charged. To the watching from the stands, it moved like lightning. 40 feet of crystalline death crossing the arena in the time it took to blink. Its first claw came down with enough force to shatter a building. The impact sent cracks racing across the stone floor. Dust and debris exploded into the air. The crowd cheered. It was over. The tiny human had been crushed in the first second, just as everyone had expected. Then the dust cleared. Was not where the claw had landed. She was 20 feet to the left, already moving again. To her, the Guardian's attack had been almost slow. Not truly slow, of course. Her rational mind knew the creature was fast, but her body had entered a state that her ancestors had developed over millions of years of survival. Her heart was pounding. Her blood was filled with adrenaline. Her pupils were dilated, taking in every detail of the fight. Her nervous system was processing information at speeds that would have seemed impossible to any other species. Time had stretched like rubber. This was what it meant to be a persistence predator. This was what it meant to come from a death world. The Guardian spun toward her. It was confused. Nothing had ever dodged its first strike before. For 3,000 years, the fight had always ended the same way. One blow, one death, simple. This was not simple. Ran, not away from the creature, but toward it. She ducked under its second arm as it swept toward her. She felt the wind of the attack pass over her head. The claw missed her by inches, but inches were all she needed. She was inside its guard now, close to its body. The Guardian tried to step back to create distance, but moved with it. She was a shadow attached to its crystalline hide. Wherever it went, she followed. The creature roared in frustration. It brought all 4 arms down at once, trying to crush her against its own body. Any other challenger would have been trapped. Any other species would have frozen in fear. Jumped. Not high. Humans could not fly, but she jumped with the power of legs built to run across savannas for days without stopping. She jumped with muscles dense from growing up in gravity that would have crushed a child. She jumped, and for a moment she was climbing up the Guardian's own body like a mountain. The molecular blade sang. She struck once, a line of light across the creature's chest. The crystalline armor parted like water, revealing dark flesh beneath. It was the first wound the Guardian had suffered in 3,000 years. The crowd went silent. The Guardian screamed. The sound was different now. Not a roar of power, but a howl of pain and shock. It had never felt pain before. It did not know how to process the sensation. For a single heartbeat, it froze. That heartbeat was all needed. She struck again. The blade cut deeper this time, slicing through the flesh beneath the armor. Black blood sprayed across the white stone of the arena. The Guardian staggered, reaching for its chest with claws that suddenly seemed clumsy and slow. Did not stop. She could not stop. On Earth, when you had a predator on the ground, you finished it. You did not give it time to recover. You did not give it time to think. You pressed your advantage until the thing was dead. This was not cruelty. This was survival. She climbed higher, using the cracks in the Guardian's armor as handholds. The creature thrashed, trying to throw her off, but she held on with grip strength that had been built for climbing trees to escape predators. Her fingers dug into crystalline edges sharp enough to cut normal skin. Her blood ran down the Guardian's chest, mixing with its own. She did not feel the pain. The adrenaline had burned that away. There was only the target. There was only the core. The Guardian's regenerative core was visible now through the wound she had opened. It pulsed with a sickly light, already working to repair the damage. In seconds, the armor would regrow. In minutes, the creature would be whole again. Did not give it seconds. She drove the molecular blade into the core with both hands. The weapon passed through the soft tissue like it was not there at all. She felt the resistance of vital organs, the strange heat of alien blood, and then nothing. The blade had gone all the way through. The Guardian stopped moving. For a moment nothing happened. The creature stood frozen, a statue of crystal and blood. The crowd held its breath. The Emperor leaned forward on his platform. The Crown Prince's smile had vanished. Then the Apex Guardian fell. It collapsed in sections like a building coming down. First the legs buckled, then the torso twisted. Finally, the massive body crashed to the arena floor with an impact that shook the entire city. Dust rose in a cloud that blocked out the sun. When the dust settled, stood on top of the creature's corpse. Her uniform was torn and soaked with blood, both hers and the Guardian's. Her hands were cut to ribbons from climbing the crystalline armor. She was breathing hard, her heart still pounding with the rhythm of combat. She looked up at the crowd. Millions stared back at her in absolute silence. They could not understand what they had just witnessed. Their minds could not process it. The Apex Guardian, the unkillable protector of their empire, was dead. And the thing that had killed it was a creature they had considered barely more than an animal. 37 seconds. The entire fight had lasted 37 seconds. Raised her blade above her head. Black blood dripped down her arm. Her voice was raw from breathing the thin air, but she made sure everyone could hear her. She said nothing. She did not need to. The blade in her hand and the monster at her feet spoke louder than any words. Up on his platform, the Emperor slowly rose from his throne. His face was unreadable. His crystalline skin showed no emotion, but his hands were trembling. In 10,000 years of rule, no emperor had ever seen the Guardian fall. Crown Prince X was no longer smiling. His silver skin had gone pale. He looked at like he was seeing her for the first time, and in a way he was. For the first time in his 300 years of life, he was looking at a human not as a pet or a curiosity. He was looking at her as a predator. The silence stretched across the arena. No one knew what to say. No one knew what to do. The law was clear, but the law had never been tested. Not like this. Finally, the Emperor spoke. His voice carried across the arena, amplified by ancient technology. It was the voice of a god pronouncing judgment. The trial was complete. The human had won. And now, by the unbreakable law of the Empire, her bloodline would be joined with the royal family. The crowd erupted, not in cheers but in chaos, screaming, shouting, arguments. Some demanded the law be ignored. Some demanded the human be killed anyway. Some simply stared in shock, unable to believe what was happening. Stood alone on the body of the Guardian and watched them all. She was bleeding. She was exhausted. And she had just changed the future of the galaxy. She smiled again, the same smile she had shown before the fight began, the smile of a predator who knew exactly what she had done. The hunt was over. Now came the real challenge. The Emperor descended from his platform like a falling star. His robes flowed behind him, white as snow against his blue crystalline skin. The crowd fell silent as he walked across the arena toward the human woman standing on the Guardian's corpse. Watched him come. She did not kneel. She did not bow. Her legs were too tired for ceremony, and besides, she had just killed their unkillable monster. She felt she had earned the right to stand. The Emperor stopped 10 feet away from her. Up close, he was even more impressive. 9 feet of living crystal, with eyes that burned like cold stars. He had ruled the 12 systems for 1,000 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had never seen anything like this. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was heavy with history. Everyone watching knew that what happened next would be remembered forever. The Emperor spoke first. His voice was quiet now, meant only for her ears. He asked her how. How had she done what no one had done in 3,000 years? How had a creature half his size, from a species barely out of its own star system, killed the Apex Guardian in 37 seconds. Looked at him with her dark, tired eyes. She told him the truth. She said that her people came from a world that tried to kill them every day of their lives. She said that everything on Earth was designed to hunt, poison, or destroy. She said that humans were not strong despite their world. They were strong because of it. The Emperor considered this. Then he asked another question, the one that really mattered. He asked if there were more like her. Smiled. She told him there were 8 billion humans on Earth, and every single one of them had survived the same death world that had created her. The Emperor was silent for a very long time. Around them, the arena was in chaos. Advisors were screaming at each other. Military officers were calling for their weapons. The noble families were arguing about what should happen next. Some wanted to honor the law. Many more wanted to break it. Crown Prince X pushed his way through the crowd. His silver skin was flushed with anger, and his voice cracked as he shouted. He demanded that the trial be declared void. He said that the human had cheated somehow. He said that no primitive creature could have defeated the Guardian fairly. The Emperor turned to look at his son. His expression did not change, but something in his eyes grew cold. He asked the Crown Prince if he was suggesting that the law of their ancestors was wrong. He asked if the prince wanted to tell the galaxy that the Empire did not honor its own traditions. He asked if the prince understood what would happen if they broke this law today. The prince went silent. He understood. If the Empire broke its own law, every other species in the galaxy would see them as liars. Every treaty would be questioned. Every alliance would crumble. 10,000 years of reputation would be destroyed in a single day. The law was not just a tradition. It was the foundation of their power. The Emperor turned back too. He straightened his robes. He took a deep breath. And then, in a voice that carried across the entire arena, he spoke the words that would reshape history. By the ancient law of the human called had defeated the Apex Guardian in single combat. By this victory, she had earned the right to join her bloodline with the royal family. Her children would be princes and princesses of the Empire. Her genetics would flow through the throne forever. The crowd exploded. Some screamed in horror. Some cheered in shock. Some simply stood frozen, unable to believe what they were hearing. The impossible had happened. A human, a creature from a death world, had forced her way into the greatest dynasty in the galaxy. Raised her hand. The crowd slowly fell silent again. They wanted to hear what she would say. She did not thank them. She did not celebrate. Instead, she made something very clear. She said that she would choose which members of the royal family would be the parents of her children. She said that she was not a prize to be claimed. She said that she was the one who would do the claiming. The law gave her the right to join her blood with the royal family. It did not say she had to accept whoever they chose for her. It did not say she had to be a passive reward. For 3,000 years, the winners of the trial had been powerful warriors who chose their mates from the royal princesses, saw no reason why the same rule should not apply to her. The Emperor's eyes widened. He had not considered this. No one had. The law was old, and no one had ever read it with these new eyes. Continued. She said that she would meet with the princes and princesses of the royal blood. She would learn about them. She would judge their character, their intelligence, their strength. And then she would choose which ones were worthy to help her create the next generation of the royal line. For a moment she looked directly at Crown Prince X. He had insulted her. He had called her a pet. He had laughed at her. She told him that he was not on her list. The prince's face twisted with rage, but he could not speak. The law was clear. The victor of the trial held the power, and the victor was this small, blood-soaked human woman who had just destroyed everything he thought he knew about the universe. The political earthquake began immediately. Messages flew across the galaxy at faster-than-light speeds. Earth's government received word of what had happened within hours. Suddenly, Humanity was not a curiosity anymore. They were a species that had defeated the most powerful empire in the sector at its own game. Human ambassadors who had been ignored for years suddenly found themselves invited to every noble house. Human traders who had struggled to sell their goods now had customers lining up. Human military advisors, once dismissed as primitives, were now being asked for their secrets. How had they done it? How had they created warriors like? How could a species from such a terrible world produce such impossible strength? The answers were simple, but they did not want to believe them. Humans were not special because of technology or magic. They were special because their world had never stopped trying to kill them. They were the survivors of 1 billion years of violence, shaped by evolution into something that could endure anything. And now, that genetic legacy would be woven into the royal bloodline of the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Spent the following weeks recovering from her wounds and meeting with the royal family. She was given quarters in the palace, the same rooms where the greatest champions of history had stayed. She was given servants, though she told them she preferred to take care of herself. She was given everything she asked for. But most importantly, she was given power. For the first time in 3,000 years, someone outside the species had a voice in the future of the empire. And that someone was a human woman from a death world who had killed their god with a knife. Knew that many of the nobles wanted her dead. She knew that there would be assassination attempts. She knew that the crown prince would do everything in his power to remove her from the picture. She did not care. She had survived Earth. She had survived the Guardian. She would survive whatever the threw at her. And when she finally chose the father of her children, it would be someone worthy of the legacy she carried. Someone who understood that strength did not come from size or power. Someone who understood that the greatest warriors were forged in the hottest fires. Had not come to become a queen, but the universe had other plans. And she was going to make sure those plans went exactly the way she wanted. 5 years passed like water flowing through stone. The galaxy had changed. The empire had changed. And at the heart of it all stood a little girl with dark human eyes and skin that shimmered like crystal in the sunlight. Her name was Diana, had named her after the ancient earth goddess of the hunt. It seemed fitting for the first child of 2 species, born from a union that had shaken the foundations of galactic civilization. Diana took her first steps in the imperial garden on a morning when 3 moons hung in the purple sky. She walked with a confidence that surprised the servants watching her. Most royal children took years to find their balance. Diana had been walking for only a month, and already she moved like she owned the ground beneath her feet. Watched from a bench nearby, a cup of earth coffee in her hands. They had learned to import it just for her. They had also learned to respect her in ways they had never respected any outsider before. The father sat beside her. Prince was not the heir to the throne. He was a third son, often overlooked by his more ambitious brothers, but had chosen him precisely because of this. He was kind where others were cruel. He was curious where others were arrogant. He had asked her questions about Earth with genuine interest, not with the disgust that most showed. More importantly, he had treated her like a person from the very first day. That had mattered more than anything else. Their marriage had been the largest ceremony in the history of the empire. Dignitaries from 100 worlds had attended. Earth had sent its president personally. The broadcast had been watched by trillions of beings across the galaxy. But the wedding was not the most important change. The most important change was what happened after. Diana was proof that human and genetics could combine, and Diana was healthy, strong, and growing faster than anyone had expected. The royal scientists studied her constantly, always with permission. They found something remarkable. She had inherited the best of both species. She had the crystalline undertones of skin, but denser, harder to break. She had human bone density and muscle structure, giving her strength that other children could not match. Her reflexes were faster than any pure-blooded royal. Her endurance was beyond anything they had measured before. She was, in every way, superior to either species alone. This scared some of the nobles, it thrilled others, but everyone understood what it meant. The future rulers of the empire would carry human genetics, and those genetics made them stronger. Across the 12 systems, everything had shifted. Human advisors now served in every major noble house. They were valued for their strange way of thinking, their death-world instincts that saw danger where others saw safety. They were hired as military consultants, security experts, and crisis managers. Human traders had become wealthy beyond imagination. The goods they sold, things that were common on Earth, were exotic luxuries here. Coffee was worth its weight in starship fuel. Chocolate was a delicacy served only at the most exclusive gatherings. Alcohol, which most galactic species could not tolerate, had become a symbol of power. Only the strongest could drink it without falling unconscious. Human music and stories had spread through the galactic networks like wildfire. They were fascinated by tales of a world where everything wanted to kill you. They watched documentaries about Earth's predators with the same horror that humans might watch movies about monsters. To them, Earth was a nightmare planet, and the creatures that had emerged from that nightmare were finally getting the respect they deserved. Crown Prince X had not taken any of this well. He had tried 3 times to have assassinated. Each attempt had failed. The first assassin had underestimated her combat training. The second had not known about the human security team that now protected her at all times. The third had simply vanished, and no one asked what had happened to him. After the third attempt, the Emperor had finally lost patience with his eldest son. X was stripped of his position as heir. He was sent to a distant outpost at the edge of the Empire, where he could do no more harm. The new heir was his husband. This meant that Diana would one day be first in line for the throne. A human hybrid empress. It was something that would have seemed impossible just 5 years ago. Now it was simply the future. Finished her coffee and stood. Diana ran to her, laughing, and swept her daughter into her arms. The little girl had her mother's smile and her father's gentle nature. She would need both in the years to come. The arena where had killed the Guardian had been transformed into a memorial. The creature's body had been preserved in crystal, a monument to the day everything changed, and in front of it stood a new statue. The statue showed as she had been in the moment before the fight, small, alone, facing an impossible enemy with nothing but a blade in her hand. The artist had captured something in her expression, a quietness that was not peace. It was the focus of a predator about to strike. The inscription beneath the statue was written in both script and English. It read, "She did not come from a paradise. She came from a world that wanted her dead since the day she was born, and she survived anyway. That is what it means to be human." Visitors came from across the galaxy to see it. They stood before the statue and tried to understand. How had such a small creature defeated such a monster? How had a species so young conquered a challenge that had broken warriors for? The answer was always the same. Humans were not successful despite their death world. They were successful because of it. Every challenge, every predator, every disaster had made them stronger. They had been forged in fire, and they had emerged as something the galaxy had never seen before. Visited the memorial sometimes, late at night when the crowds were gone. She stood before the statue of herself and remembered the fear she had felt. She remembered the moment the Guardian charged. She remembered the blade singing through the air. She did not feel proud when she remembered these things. She felt grateful, grateful that her ancestors had survived, grateful that their strength had passed down to her, grateful that she had been able to use it when it mattered most. Diana would carry that strength into the future, and so would her children and their children after them. The royal bloodline of the Empire would forever carry the genetics of Earth, the death world that had produced the most impossible species in the galaxy. They had ruled the sector for 10,000 years. They had believed themselves the apex predators of the universe. They had never met humanity. Now they never would forget. Looked up at the purple sky, where Earth was just a tiny dot of light among millions of stars. She smiled the same smile she had shown in the arena, the smile of a predator, the smile of a survivor, the smile of a mother whose daughter would one day rule the stars. The hunt was over, the new dynasty had begun, and it would last forever.